At 67, Ava Gardner finally opened up about Humphrey Bogart. For decades, she had lived her life in the spotlight, sometimes dazzling, sometimes turbulent, always unforgettable. It rarely had she spoken directly about Bogey. When she finally did, her words revealed not just the man behind the legend, but also the woman who had fought her own battles in Hollywood. Ava Gardner was born Ava Lavinia Gardner on December 24, 1922, in Grabtown, North Carolina. She grew up in a modest tobacco sharecropping family, the youngest of 7 children, shaped by the hardships of the Depression-era South. Despite the poverty of her upbringing, Ava carried herself with a mixture of elegance and earthiness that never left her. She was discovered in the early 1940s by MGM talent scouts, who were struck by her luminous beauty and undeniable presence. But it wasn't just her emerald eyes or flawless features that set her apart. She had charisma, the kind of magnetism that drew people in and kept them there. Her career began with small roles, but by 1946 she broke through in The Killers. Suddenly, Hollywood realized Ava wasn't just another pretty face. She could embody complex, vulnerable, and fierce women with a raw emotional truth that resonated deeply with audiences. Over the years, she starred in classics like Showboat, 1951, Mogambo 1953, which earned her an Oscar nomination, and On the Beach 1959. On screen, she was luminous. Off-screen, she lived as passionately as she acted. Her personal life, however, was marked by a series of high-profile marriages. At just 19, she married America's Boy Next Door, Mickey Rooney. MGM insisted on secrecy, fearing his wholesome Andy Hardy image would be tarnished by marriage. But the romance collapsed quickly. Ava discovered Rooney's gambling, infidelity, and recklessness. By 1943, she divorced him, disillusioned but wiser. Her second marriage, to jazz musician Artie Shaw, brought no more peace. Shaw's brilliance was shadowed by arrogance and condescension. He belittled Ava's background and intellect, demanding perfection she could never give. The marriage lasted only a year. Ava's third marriage, however, became the most famous and the most tumultuous. In 1951, she wed Frank Sinatra. Their love was explosive, consuming, and impossible to hide from the press. They fought, they reconciled, they adored each other fiercely. Twice, Ava became pregnant, but due to MGM's strict contracts forbidding motherhood, she made the heartbreaking choice to end both pregnancies. By 1954, the marriage had burned itself out, though the divorce wasn't finalized until 1957. Yet Ava always insisted Sinatra was the great love of her life, and he, in turn, never stopped caring for her. Through it all, Ava worked with some of Hollywood's greatest men: Clark Gable, Burt Lancaster, Gregory Peck, but one name hovered in the background, whispered in stories, linked through friendships: Humphrey Bogart. When Ava entered Hollywood, Bogart was already a towering star, with The Maltese Falcon and Casablanca making him an icon. To the public, he was the hard-drinking, cynical tough guy. But to those who knew him, Bogey was sharp, funny, loyal, and far more complex than his roles suggested. For years, Ava avoided speaking of him in detail. But in her late 60s, sitting in her London flat, she finally shared her truth. Bogart was one of a kind, she said with a wistful smile. He wasn't just the tough guy on screen, he was sharp, funny, and he had this way of making you feel like you were in on the joke with him. She paused, then added, "People forget, Bogey wasn't tall or particularly handsome like Cary Grant. But when he walked into a room, everything shifted. He had presence, pure magnetism. That's something you can't fake on screen or in real life." Ava felt a kinship with Bogart. Like her, he had been underestimated at first. He had to fight to prove himself, just like I did, she admitted. Both had been labeled him as just another gangster type, her as just another pretty MGM girl. But both fought against the boxes Hollywood tried to trap them in, and both proved themselves artists of substance. Through Sinatra, Ava grew closer to Bogart and his wife, Lauren Bacall. She remembered evenings when Bogey entertained friends, drinking late into the night with that famous twinkle in his eye. Even when he was 3 sheets to the wind, Ava recalled, he made you feel seen, even if the whole room was after. His attention, to her, he represented an era of Hollywood that could never be recreated. He smoked, he drank, he said what he thought. The studios tried to manufacture another Bogart a dozen times, but they couldn't. He was the real thing. Her voice softened when she spoke of his flaws. He wasn't perfect. He had his demons, like we all did. He could be moody, stubborn, difficult, but that's what made him human. That's what made him Bogart. And maybe that's why even now, people can't let him go. He left something untouchable behind. In speaking about Bogart, Ava was also speaking about herself, about authenticity, about the fight to be taken seriously, about leaving behind more than just an image. I don't think there will ever be another Bogey, she said at last. He belonged to his time, and yet, he somehow belongs to all time. That's the best any of us can hope for, to be remembered the way he is. And he deserves every bit of it. By then, Ava had already begun to feel the weight of age. In 1986, she suffered a stroke that left her health in decline. It was Sinatra who once again stepped in, arranging her medical care and flying her to specialists with a private, medically staffed plane. For a woman so fiercely independent, allowing him to help was a final acknowledgement of their unbreakable bond. Ava Gardner passed away on January 25, 1990 in London at the age of 67 from pneumonia. Just days later, she was brought home to North Carolina, where she was laid to rest beside her family. The small-town girl who had become a Hollywood legend found peace at last, leaving behind not only unforgettable performances in films like The Killers, Mogambo, and The Barefoot Contessa, but also the enduring image of a woman who lived unapologetically, loved fiercely, and told her truth only when she was ready. And when she finally spoke of Humphrey Bogart, it was as if one legend was saluting another, two kindred spirits who had each, in their own way, defined what it meant to be real in a world built on illusion.